The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that is happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is DoubleTap TV.
Welcome to another edition of DoubleTap TV. Thank you guys so much for being here each and every single week. I say that all the time, but I really do mean it. Email us feedback at AMI.CA. Anything you like, some comments, some criticism, some video questions for perhaps a future Ask Us Anything episode. Again, feedback at AMI.CA. And of course on Twitter, reach out at DoubleTap Canada with the hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. I am Mark AFLALO with Stephen Scott by my side each and every single week. Stephen, do you have a challenge at home where you'd want to keep your wife safe on the internet? You're trying to keep her away from all those predators, and she's not a child, is she?
She's not a child, no, thank you. It's good to clarify that my wife is not a child. I think I'm the baby of the family, if I'm brutally honest about it. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, internet safety is a real scary thing, right? We don't have kids, but, you know, still, there's always that chance. I mean, actually, funny, we talk about this week, and I've just had an email exchange with a friend of mine, only to find out, because just something in the email didn't add up to me. Just the tone of the email, the way it was written and the request that was in it, just made me question. So I called him and I said, was this you, is this you sending me these emails? And he said, no, I've not sent you an email in weeks. In fact, you know, why haven't you been talking to me? And I'm like, I have been talking to you, but it's just not been you. It's been some bot or some hacker or who knows who, but pretending to be you. So that's quite concerning that can happen. And a lot of people think that guys like us who work in this field, who, you know, soak up all this information all the time, you know, we'd never be caught out. But absolutely it can happen because these scams are getting so sophisticated now. And, you know, that really has an impact on our safety online, and it also dents our confidence when we're online as well. So I'm really glad we're talking about this week for people.
Yeah, that attempt there was called a phishing attempt. And the reason they call this a phishing attempt, even though they spell phishing with a PH in front of it instead of just a phishing with an F, is because, you know, it's these people out there are trying to literally throw a line into the water, the internet water, and hopefully they'll get one or two people to bite, and they may be able to make some money off that. And that comes in so many shapes and forms. Email is one of them, where it looks like it's coming from somebody. So yes, technology has gotten to a point where someone can send an email, make it seem like it's coming from someone you know. They can make it seem like it's coming from yourself. And they've even got so smart as creating web pages that look like the login page for your banking, or maybe your OneDrive account, or maybe your email account, so that, you know, they'll send an email saying, oh, you know, do you want it to reset your password? Oh, or your password was compromised. Click here to reset it. And it looks so real because the only thing that's changed on that page is going to be that one link to where they want you to go. Everything else will be a link to the real Facebook page, for example, or the real banking site. And if you click on that one link and you look at the page and you don't pay attention to the details and the spelling and everything that's around it, you may enter your username and password. And within seconds, they've got automation scripts and they've got stuff that's behind the scenes there that's going to go immediately change your password on those media sites or the banking site, and try to get as much as they can on you to either use it as an attempt to blackmail you, perhaps use it as an attempt to, you know, take your identity. There are so many ways that people can do this, and it's becoming more and more dangerous because the technology that is available to them who are trying to, you know, do these attacks is getting smarter. So that was a good call on your part. Making that phone call is one of those things that was a great call on your part.
And, you know, that's the thing, it's so easy to do, although there is one benefit in being blind in this situation. Because I use a screen reader, on one occasion I had gone to an email which had said exactly that my Apple account had been compromised. Now, of course, you know, Apple is a website I'm on quite a lot. Either it's the store or, you know, it's on one of the iCloud related sites. And I'd gone via the link in the email, and what I did was, just first, I checked the address bar, just made sure that the website was genuine. Now, to all intents and purposes, I imagine it would have looked like it said apple.com/whatever, but actually when you read across it with the screen reader, it was appie.com. So, you know, your eye would maybe not pick up on that, but suddenly there you go. Appie.com was actually apple.com. It made it look like it was the real website. And of course, it wasn't.
It's amazing. And you know what? There's so much technology out there that is also protecting us, whether it's an antivirus software on our local computer. And, there are many people out there that think they don't need it if they're running on a Mac, but you do need it. You need it on everything that you're using, to restriction options and family, screen time options that you have on your iOS devices that can help limit what your kids have access to on the internet. So there are a lot of tools in place that allow us to really keep things safe. And that's one of the things we're going to be talking about this week is, a software suite that comes from a company named Trend Micro. They've been making internet security software across the board. I mean, they're behind the scenes on major server infrastructure, the infrastructure that keeps us online. And they've got a whole suite called Trend Micro Family. And we're going to talk to one of their creators of this piece of software to talk about how they philosophically deal with this, because it's more than just providing the tools to obviously protect our kids, but how do you, talk to them about that kind of stuff? How do you talk to people? How do you educate your employees or your colleagues about looking out for these things? There need to be red flags, and as you said, if you've got a disability or you're using voiceover, you've got an advantage over some people, but other people don't.
Yeah, and it's also knowing what to protect, right? Because for a long time I've thought, well, you must protect your Windows PC because it's going to get absolutely obliterated by malware and spamware and every kind of ware you can think of. Tupperware, maybe another. I don't know if that's a thing, but maybe it is, maybe it's not. But what I do find interesting is the amount of people who don't protect or think about protecting their phones. And that's a question I want to ask you. Do you ever think about that, about your smartphone? Do you ever think that perhaps you do need to have some kind of, some kind of antivirus on there?
I think about it. There has yet to be a tool that really has marketed it, I think, properly to say, this is what you should be using. And I think that, especially when it comes to using an iOS device, because of how closed the Apple ecosystem is, you're kind of wait for Apple to say, hey, maybe you should be using this tool. Maybe we endorse this tool. This is why they obviously promote constant updates. Whenever there's an update, make sure you use that update, because it's patching some kind of vulnerability that exists. It's not only giving you features, it's fixing other things that are under the hood. And a lot of these big companies have these bounty programs where they'll pay tens of thousands of millions of dollars to developers who find holes in their system, but report it to them instead of trying to exploit it. So no, I've never really put anything on my iOS device. Have you?
Not on my iOS device. I have heard of solutions for Android phones. I've often thought Apple live inside this walled garden anyway, so it's maybe not so much of a big deal. But I think as things go on, that's probably a naive viewpoint, especially because a lot of apps do go out to the web, and that could potentially cause a problem and some kind of gateway back into your phone. There's lots of routes in, I guess, these days. It's something you've got to be really careful about. But on that point about making sure stuff is secure, getting regular updates, I know a lot of blind friends of mine who still run Windows XP and Windows 7 PCs. They work really well, they do the job. There's a real fear by a lot of blind people about moving on to something like Windows 10 or Windows 11, so they stick with those machines. And of course, the security risks there are immense, but that can be the challenge for someone who's blind, trying to explain the benefits of moving forward and saying, actually, it's time to embrace the new technology, because it's not just about the new features or the new accessibility options, whatever it might be, but actually it's about security. It's making sure your data is safe.
Let's take a quick break and let's come back with our next guest, because Trend Micro is one of these companies that I'm super interested in. They have been in the security game for a very long time, since 1988, I believe, before we really had to worry about smartphones. But more so, I want to understand the philosophy of what goes into, not only educating people around us, but especially children, because, when you got kids, you got to explain things in a way that's not going to freak them out. So it is Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am Mark AFLALO. We're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to come back with our next guest. Stick around.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit AMI.CA/DoubleTap. This is Double Tap TV.
We're back on Double Tap TV. Thank you guys for being with us each and every single week. I am Mark AFLALO with Stephen Scott by my side. Stephen, let's bring on our next guest. Lynette Owens is an incredible person at, I mentioned Trend Micro many, many times, but she's a global director of internet safety for kids and families at Trend Micro. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Trend Micro has been around since 1988, building security for all the infrastructure and services that we use, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Amazon Prime, whether it's shopping online. They've been there protecting the backbone, but now they've got a new suite of product called a Trend Micro Family that is free to use. It's free to download. There's an app for adults. There's an app for your kids that help you protect the kids in way, shape, or form. Lynette, thank you so much for being here this week on Double Tap TV.
Thanks for having me.
Lynette, I got to ask you something specific to your job because that's an interesting title you've got there over at Trend Micro. I'm curious how much of your job is actually building the tools and actually protecting our kids versus educating them about the problems and the things that are out there in the world.
That's a great question. I like to think it's half and half. And the reason I say that is because we aren't just talking to students around the world. We're also very much trying to reach parents and teachers, those responsible for raising them, because we feel that if by empowering parents and guardians and teachers with this knowledge, at least in those early stages, they can serve in a protective manner to them. But ultimately, as we tell those older audiences, you're not raising children, you're raising adults. And ultimately, your goal is to make sure they're going to make decisions on their own when you're not there, that truly will benefit them as they use and embrace technology in their lives. I think it's not dissimilar from the real world where, you can only protect them for so long. At some point, they're out of your house and they're going to make decisions about who to be friends with and maybe who to get romantically involved with or who to trust. And you're not always going to be there to, help them distinguish between those they can trust and those they can't. So it's the same on the internet, teaching them critical thinking skills, things to look out for, and those kinds of everyday, I think, important life skills is the goal. So I think the answer to your question is half and half, protecting in the early days, but ultimately teaching so they can make the decisions on their own.
So Lynette, how do you go about teaching kids about internet security without scaring the heck out of them?
I think one of the things that is true, and I'm speaking as a parent, by the way, too, as well as someone who's been doing this for 14 years, and that is you have to assume they're smarter than you want to assume. And the reason with technology that is true is because they naturally have no fear of it the way that we do, because we've known so much more of our lives without it than we have known with it. And that's the opposite for them. So I think you have to assume that they know more than you're giving them credit for, and to talk to them in that way. We've found that if you go in with, as you say, messages of fear and doubt and scary tactics, you can hear the proverbial eye roll in the audience and they shut you out because they already immediately think there's no way you know more about this than I do. It's one of those areas as a parent you cannot say, when I was your age and I opened my first Facebook account. We can do that with driving and dating and so many other things that we want to teach our children about. We cannot do that with technology. So I think it's important to open their eyes, and say, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you need to go in with your eyes open. So here's what you might not know. And I like to use an example of a particular way that we talk about privacy to young people. We actually start with a question to get the kids talking. And we ask them, is X app free? Usually I pick whatever the favorite social network app is of the day. Is it free? And half the hands are raised and they're saying, yes, I think it's free. And the other half say, no, I don't think it's free. And it gets them talking about what free actually means, which then leads to a conversation about, it isn't actually free. It's kind of a trick question. You might not have paid money for it, but you're paying with something else. What is that something else? And invariably, they get into personal information. And then you ask them, why would they even want that personal information? And very naturally, they then say advertising. They don't exactly know why they're saying it, but they instinctively know that there's something going on. I am part of a system, an economy. I'm part of this thing I love so much. There's something that I'm contributing to it that's making it the way that it is. Which then leads us to the final point, and that is that, sure, use privacy settings. You don't even have to tell kids over a certain age, they know already. You know, reminding them to use it is, most kids actually want their profiles private. They don't want the whole world seeing, including their parents, but really they don't want just anyone seeing what they're doing. But even though they know that they should use settings like that, what they don't realize is there's zero privacy between you and the company whose app you're using.
Yeah, that's so true. Everybody is obviously getting older, but they're still playing these games, which is very true. Lynette, stick around. We were talking to Lynette Owens, Global Director of Safety for Families and Kids over at Trend Micro. Stephen, I hope you're learning a little bit here. I know you don't have kids, but there is a perspective here that I think is extremely important to take away.
I think there is. And, you know, even if I'm being brutally honest, I don't think about security perhaps as much as I should, because, you know, I consider myself to be a responsible adult. I'm not going onto these websites. I'm not going into places where I think I am likely to be challenged with malware. But of course, that's a very naive perspective when you think about it, isn't it? Because we can all get caught out.
Yeah, no, definitely. But you know what? We do what we can to obviously keep not only ourselves safe, but you know, everybody that we're responsible for. This is Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am MARC AFLALO. Our guest is Lynette Owens from Trend Micro. We're going to come back with more.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit AMI.CA/DoubleTap. This is Double Tap TV.
We're talking all things internet safety this week on Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being with us. If you want to get involved, of course, feedback at AMI.CA is our email address. And on Twitter, follow us at Double Tap Canada and use that hashtag when you're tweeting out at, which is the hashtag, Ask Double Tap. I am MARC AFLALO with Stephen Scott by my side, and our guest this week, Lynette Owens from Trend Micro. Now, Lynette, you know, you work in this space, and it's become a product now. You actually created a physical product that we can download that is absolutely free, both for adults and kids alike. Tell us about Trend Micro Family.
Is not just a tool that helps you turn things on and forget about it. It's something we want to be like a friend to families. And what I mean by that is, one of our messages in our program to parents is, you know, coming to one of our sessions and listening to the risks and how to protect your kids. You know, that's step one, but the rest of the steps include you being constantly involved in your kids' lives online. Ask them what they're seeing online. Do research. If you hear about a new app, then read up on it. Talk to other parents about it. So this product actually does some of the basic things that parents worry about. It helps you limit the kinds of content your kids might see that might be age inappropriate for them, websites, apps, and so on. But it also helps you manage images that they might be seeing, that if a particular web page might have bypassed your filter, whatever you said was okay, but there's an image on it. Let's say it's an ad on the side that maybe there's a scantily clad person in the ad and you just don't think it's appropriate for them. It'll blur just that image and not block the entire web page. So that's pretty unique to it. Beyond content, it helps to track, you know, keywords that they might be searching on or looking at that might be of concern to you.
Okay, so let me just ask, how do we use all this then? Is it a single app? Does it work across different platforms? It's
actually, it's two apps. So there's an app that becomes sort of the parent master app, if you will. And then there's an app you would download onto the children's device.
So Trend Micro Family is available right now. If you head on over to trendmicro.com, you can download it and sign up and hopefully keep your kids a little bit safer. And thanks to that app is the reason that, Lynette, I had you on this week. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us and talk about not only the app itself, but also the way in which you guys approach this, and hopefully gave some advice on how we can talk to our kids about internet safety.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I do want to just close by saying that on the balance and on the whole, the internet is a fantastic place, and I think we can do great things with it, as can our children. I think it's up to us to make sure that we've empowered them with all of the knowledge they need to do that, in fact.
That is Lynette Owens from Trend Micro. Stephen?
Well, the thing for me is, Mark, sitting listening to Lynette Owens talking about all this, and, as I've said earlier, I don't have kids, so, I, in a way, don't give too much of a hoot about internet security. I honestly don't.
Well said.
I sometimes just don't.
No, that's true.
I don't think about it. That's the bottom line. I don't think about it. However, this is so important for families. It's so important for kids. One conversation you probably do not want to have with your children is the dark web, right? Now, I have no idea where the door of the dark web is, and I certainly have no desire to find out. But, the problem with the internet is you can very quickly end up at that door, and you need to know what to do when you're there. Or, alternatively, what would be better is to avoid the whole thing altogether. And that's where internet security and products like Trend Micro come in.
Listen, you got to watch out for predators. You got to watch out for anonymity, because people aren't necessarily who they say they are. There's so much to worry about as a parent. It's not even funny, because our kids are chatting with one another. How do you make sure that you know every single person they're talking to? So it really is about keeping that open dialogue, I think, and being honest about it with your children. Don't scare them to the point that they don't want to go on the internet, but just let them know that, you got to be cautious about things. Don't tell people where you live. Don't tell people what school you go to. All that regular stuff that we used to do when we were kids but didn't have a computer. Talk to strangers. Don't take candy from a stranger. But
yeah, but it's difficult, isn't it? Because parents, a lot of parents aren't tech savvy either. The kids are more tech savvy than they are. So that can be a real challenge as well, is to try and make sure that you're aware of the tools. And hopefully this episode has been useful to you.
Well, I'm going to go download a Trend Micro family right now and
me too,
get on board that right away. Stephen, I'll put you on as my dependent so I can protect you. It won't be a problem.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys for being with us this week. Again, if you got any questions, it's feedback@AMI.CA. And of course, follow us on Twitter. It is @DoubleTapCanada, and use that hashtag #AskDoubleTap when you've got something to say to us. On behalf of our guest Lynette Owens and Stephen Scott, I am Mark AFLALO. We'll speak to you next week here on Double Tap TV.
Hosted by Mark AFLALO and Stephen Scott. Editing, Jordan Steves and Mark AFLALO. Voiceover, Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist, Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer, Jennifer Johnson. Director, Production, CARA Nye. Director, Programming, Brian Perdue. VP, Content Development and Programming, John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2022, Accessible Media, Inc.